October marks 1 year since a conflict between Israel and Hamas started. In that year, that war has broadened out to now include Iran and Hezbollah. Also in that year, Trinidad and Tobago has recognized the state of Palestine while going on in the last month to begin diplomatic relations. What is Israel's reaction to this? And also, what will it take to end this conflict in the Middle East? My guest this week is Israeli ambassador to Trinidad and Tobago, Itai Bardov. Ambassador Itai Bardov, welcome back to the program.
Welcome. It's a pleasure being with you, Ryan, and thank you for having me.
11 months ago, you and I spoke. We had a very candid conversation about what was then the war on Hamas. That war has now broadened out all the way to Beirut. Iran is now also involved. How concerning is this war in the 21st century for both Israel and the Middle East?
Well, it's very concerning, but I just have to mention why had this war broadened a day after the terrible massacre perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th, 1 day after, October 8th, Hezbollah, which is another proxy of Iran, it started launching rockets, missiles, drones, anti-tank rockets towards civilian cities and civilian populations in northern part of Israel, forcing the displacement of more than 60,000 Israelis from their homes in the northern part of Israel. And for 11 months, Israel had been suffering and these continuous barrages of rocket fires and missiles toward their cities. And a few weeks ago, Israel decided that enough is enough, and it has to respond in order to bring back the displaced civilians to their homes. The same goes to the Houthis in Yemen. We had nothing to do with them.
I'm glad that you mentioned civilians, because it's not only Israeli civilians that have been displaced because of Hezbollah. Millions of civilians have also been displaced on the West Bank, in Palestine, now in Beirut.
No, not in the West Bank, but in Gaza and in Lebanon, southern part of Lebanon, it is true. And this is where we have to differentiate, because the two sides, I think it just is not relevant here. This is where we have to differentiate. The difference between Hezbollah, Hamas, on purposely targeting Israeli targets, Israeli civilian populations and centers, while Israel is fighting these terrorist organizations that are embedded within civilian populations. Do you know how much rocket launchers, different kinds of military equipment we have found in civilian homes in the southern part of Lebanon? And this has been ongoing for a year now. It has been ongoing for a year. So, of course, what we do is we warn civilians before we go and try and attack. And the same goes to the Dahya, the capital of Hezbollah.
Okay, so that warning has been disputed by civilians. But I want to come back to that, Mr. Ambassador, because
it has been disputed.
It has been disputed by civilians who say that they did not get any warning prior to Israel's bombing. But I want to come back to that.
I will be happy to send you. I'll be happy to send you evidence of these warnings.
I want to come back to that point, because I do want to come back to your portfolio here in the Caribbean. In May of this year, Trinidad and Tobago recognized the state of Palestine. 2 weeks ago, Trinidad and Tobago officially began diplomatic relations with the state of Palestine. What is Israel's reaction to this development?
Well, this is all a political game. I mean, what is Trinidad and Tobago? What are the Palestinians? What are they getting out of this? The Palestinians are trying to achieve these diplomatic achievements, but at the end of the day, they know that
they have achieved a lot of them, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but many other countries.
Can you tell me how that's helped them on the ground? If they are trying to ignore Israel, to go over Israel's head, and we repeat and say, if you want to solve this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, you have to sit at the negotiating table. We have to speak with each other bilaterally. We can do it with the assistance of the international community, but they don't want to speak with us. They are not recognizing the right of Israel to exist. And all these chants from the river to the sea are calling for the elimination of the state of Israel. I would implore also Trinidad and Tobago, pressure the Palestinians to A, first stop the incitement, B, stop the terrorism, and C, come and speak with Israel at the negotiating table.
But Israel has
That's
had.
what Trinidad and Tobago has to do.
You're saying to pressure the Palestinians into coming to the negotiating table and to negotiate in good faith. Israel has had the upper hand in this war since October last year. It is Israel that has spread this war across the West Bank. It is Israel that has gone.
Ryan,
It is Israel who has gone to Iran and to now Lebanon. So it is Israel who is. It is Israel who is in the best possible position to force home a negotiation, not the Palestinian people who are under the hand of Israel.
Unfortunately, that isn't true, and I'll explain why. But first of all, speaking, this is a war that Israel did not choose. We did not want it. We did not expect it. It started with this terrible massacre perpetrated by Hamas that not just murdered and assassinated,
so
it tortured and raped.
How do you answer the people? How do you answer the people? We get what happened on October 7th.
No, Israel. I want to answer your question. Israel has the upper hand militarily. Thank God we are an innovative country. We are a country that respects all its people. So all its people are donating to the economy, to Israel's strength, and so forth. But what I want to say here is, to make peace, you need two to tango. We can have the strongest military in the region, no problem. If the other side is not willing to make peace, is not willing to say Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish nation within its borders, doesn't matter how strong we are, we cannot force them to come to the negotiating table. And the problem is, when you have countries like Trinidad and Tobago who give the Palestinians this kind of perception that no problem, we are on your side, whatever happens, the Palestinians don't feel any need to come and speak directly with Israel. They're saying, hey, yes, listen, Trinidad and Tobago has recognized us as a Palestinian state. They've spoken for us at the United Nations. Where is the incentive for the Palestinians to come to the negotiating table with Israel? All the pressure is always on Israel. We've extended our hand for peace many times. There have been so many proposals on the table for a Palestinian state, only to be rejected by the Palestinians time and time again.
Okay, so let's talk about the Palestinian state, because Trinidad and Tobago's government would like to see pre-1967 borders reinstituted in this two-state solution.
Well, that's something that has to be discussed on the negotiating table, but that is something that has already been proposed in the past. I urge your listeners to go and look for Olmert, Abu Mazen, Ehud Barak, Arafat. To look at the partition plan, 1947, that was rejected by the Arabs and was approved by the Jews.
This has been on the table time and time again. Will you support pre-1967 borders?
But wait, Ryan, the problem is that what we are seeing happening right now is the Palestinians urging for the destruction of the state of Israel, not for a solution, a pre-1967 solution. Where's Trinidad and Tobago? What is their stance when pro-Palestinians say that they want to globalize the Intifada? We don't want 1948. We don't want two states. We want 1948 in their chants, from the river to the sea. Where is Trinidad and Tobago speaking against these chants that call for the complete destruction of the Jewish nation? That's a problem, and that is where, unfortunately, I don't hear voices from TNT or from many Caribbean countries telling the Palestinians, no, you have to agree to living side by side peacefully next to a Jewish state. And as long as they continue teaching in their schools or broadcasting on their TVs that Israel has no right to exist, that we have to kill the Jews, as long as they do the pay for slave, meaning they're paying the families of terrorists that kill Jews.
Hang on. Mr. Ambassador, you are saying they, which I think it's a very unfortunate statement, because there are millions of civilians that have been caught up in this war in the Middle East that you have to admit do not want war, want to live peaceably. What you are talking about is state-sponsored terrorism, going through television, going through schools and teaching about terrorism. But the vast majority of Palestinians who have become refugees and who have died and who have suffered because of this war do not teach that in their schools. That's a completely incorrect statement.
You're bringing statements that are really distorting the fact. And if you would just give me, I want to explain. If you'll just give me a couple of minutes. In 2005, Israel completely withdrew from Gaza. Completely, we left it under the Palestinian Authority control. Completely, we left not even one grave. We uprooted graves. Everything, left it under Palestinian control. There was no siege, and by the way, we did not control the border with Egypt. I mean, there was no siege, nothing. It was under. What happened? The Palestinians in Gaza decided to elect Hamas. They were fed up with the Palestinian Authority's corruption, and they wanted an organization that was speaking very strongly against Israel, okay? And in 2006, Hamas was elected into power. The Palestinian Authority did not accept these elections. In 2007, Hamas by force took over from the Palestinian Authority, killing members of the Palestinian Authority, took Gaza over by force, and started launching dozens and dozens of rockets every day towards Israel. And opening a conflict between us and Gaza that we did not want. We withdrew from Gaza. We gave them. What happened was the majority of the Palestinians said, no, we want to support a terrorist organization that is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. I ask you, I mean, you speak on behalf of the Palestinians that they want peace. Why don't you think that Israelis want peace?
Okay,
we have
that's let me correct that statement. Let me correct that statement. I don't speak on behalf of the Palestinian people, nor do I speak on.
With statements. You came with statements about millions.
I never said that Israel doesn't want peace either.
Let me add one. You have to let me add one more point, because you came about statements of what millions of Palestinians want. You didn't say anything about what millions of Israelis want, and we have proven in the past we made peace with Egypt, giving them the Sinai Peninsula back, the Sinai Peninsula 3 times the size of the state of Israel, rich with resources, just for a signature on a piece of paper. We made peace with Jordan, giving them land and providing them every year, according to the peace agreement, 25 million cubic liters of water, just for a signature of peace on a piece of paper. We did the Abraham Accords treaties. We made peace with the Arab Emirates. We made with Bahrain, with Morocco. We were on the verge of normalization with the Saudis before October 7th, before Hamas perpetrated this terrible massacre. So this kind of statement that you're speaking on behalf of the Palestinians, but not even giving any kind of inclination towards what the Israelis feel. We don't want war. We want to live in peace with our neighbors. We are not able to do it because we keep on having to suffer these continuous attacks. And no country, no other, just my final statement, no other country in the world would have accepted, would have just sat tight and agreed to this terrible massacre that took place on October 7th, and would say, okay, we'll let them continue living side by side next to us, so that, Ryan Bachu does not criticize Israel for defending itself.
Okay, I didn't criticize Israel, 1. 2, I don't speak on behalf of the people of Palestine. 3, Israel has a right to defend itself, but according to Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States, the way in which it defends itself is very important. I do want to point to this. Coming up, have relations between both countries suffered because of Trinidad and Tobago's decision to recognize the state of Palestine? I do want to point to the September 13th resolution on the International Court of Justice advisory opinion on Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories, whereby the court deemed Israel's occupation of Palestine to be unlawful and urged that it be brought in line with international law. Trinidad and Tobago has endorsed that resolution on the International Court of Justice. While you say that Israel has a right to defend itself, Mr. Ambassador, the way in which Israel has gone about defending itself has, according to this International Court of Justice, broken international law. According to this.
First of all, the ICJ is an ongoing situation right now. It's not a final statement. It's an ongoing situation. But in regards to Israel, you don't think Israel has a right to defend itself? Unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago is not risking its own.
Israel is part of the international system.
You're not letting me answer.
Doesn't Israel has a right to defend itself within the confines of international law?
I'm enabling you to give this statement, and you're not letting me respond. Please let me respond. What I was saying is that Israel has definitely a right to defend itself, and that what happened with Gaza, unfortunately, because Israel is the one taking the risk on its own citizens, on its own borders, with people who want to destroy it. Trinidad and Tobago is not taking any risk. The ICJ in The Hague has no risk on its own security. The only ones who have a risk on their own existence is the state of Israel, and we have to defend ourselves. Now, I can tell you, as the ambassador of the state of Israel, we want to live in peace with our neighbors. We don't want to go back to Gaza. We've left Gaza in 2005. We've returned militarily to defend our people 19 years later, after what happened to us in southern part of Israel. We're now in Lebanon because Hezbollah decided to launch thousands, to date, 10,000 rockets have been launched. How would Trinidad and Tobago react if a neighboring country would launch 10,000 rockets towards its cities? without any provocation from outside. They just decided that they're going to join Hamas and defend Hamas. And all this is being orchestrated
Mr.
by
Ambassador,
Iran.
with all
And
due
you are,
respect, in every war, there are allies. The United States is the ally of Israel, and now the Palestinian people have found an ally in Iran and Hezbollah. So
well,
just
tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. But I want to say that it all stems to who initiated. You spoke of, you spoke that Iran initiated. Iran twice fired projectiles, ballistic missiles, ground-to-ground missiles, drones. Just last week, nearly 200 ballistic missiles with a half a ton and more warheads towards a state, a sovereign state. What do you think we need to do? We did not ask for this. We did not choose this. This started with Hamas, and it's spreading because this is something that you have to really take into account. This is all being orchestrated by Iran. And Iran right now, the regime, the dictatorship, the Iranian regime, Islamic regime of Iran is concerned that its circle of terror that it has been creating for decades with billions of dollars is starting to crumble. That is why you're seeing. Can you tell me, did we initiate anything with the Houthis? Did we initiate anything with the Shiite militias in Iraq? Why are they firing at us? Why are they attacking us? So are we not supposed to defend ourselves from them as well? Are you always going to do this on a two-side basis and not see who is initiating and who is defending? Saying that we have allies and the United States is assisting us in defending intercepting missiles being fired from Iran towards Israel. You compare that to Hezbollah joining Hamas and launching non-stop rockets and declaring that Israel needs to be destroyed. There's no comparison.
Mr. Ambassador, you and I, for the last 11 months, you and I have had this conversation again and again. And it's not only about the terrorists. There are millions of refugees, millions of children that are being displaced and being killed in this war. And I continuously put the question to you, yes, in Israel's fight to root out terrorism in the Middle East that threatens the very nationhood of Israel, has not Israel taken into account the millions of children and women and vulnerable people that are being displaced? When you tell me that I'm talking on behalf of the Palestinian people, I'm talking on behalf of those who do not have a voice in this war.
No, when I'm saying that, I'm just wondering if you've ever asked questions to the Palestinian side about how they're treating Israel. But let me respond. I mean, Israel, of course, we're taking into account the civilian population. That is why the ratio between terrorists and non-terrorists is probably the most favorable ratio we've seen in urban warfare in history. That's factual.
Hundreds of thousands of civilians have died in this war. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have died.
Where do you get hundreds of thousands? Even the Gaza Health Ministry, which is Hamas, is claiming 40,000. And by the way, they're not differentiating between Hamas terrorists and civilians. They're claiming 40,000. Do you think not one of them is a Hamas terrorist? I'm saying that they're distorting the fact. How do you get to 100,000, hundreds of thousands? I don't know where you get that number from. It's just not true. It's just not true. And the reason that it could have easily reached more than hundreds of thousands is Israel is trying everything in its power to avoid civilian casualties. And Hamas has been hit hard. And when you get the numbers from the Hamas Health Ministry, for some reason, they're not mentioning who is terrorist and who is not. They're trying to distort the truth. But Ryan, my question to you is, what would you expect to do? We need to send an email to Hamas saying, please don't attack us anymore. Please release the 101 hostages who you haven't mentioned, till this point. The 101 hostages who have been for more than a year in Gaza, in the tunnels. Some of them have been murdered. Some of them have been murdered with a bullet to their head, to the back of their head, with their hands tied behind their back. Some of them are being raped while we're talking. There's a toddler who was kidnapped 9 months old and his brother 4 years old. We don't know where they are. We don't know what their situation is. What would you have us do? Write an email, ask them very nicely, please don't attack us anymore?
I just wanted to clarify that statement that I made. I was talking about decades of war in the Middle East. Now, let's talk about that. You say that...
Even decades of war, the numbers of casualties on both sides don't compare to the numbers of a 2-year civil war in Syria. It doesn't come close. But that is not mentioned, where the Syrian regime killed much more Muslims and Arabs and Israel did.
All right, Mr. Ambassador, I do want to get to the negotiations a bit. What will it take for all sides to come to a common conclusion of a ceasefire to stop this, if even temporarily to stop this?
Okay, this is a I mean, you're asking a question that doesn't have a simple answer. But first of all the hostages need to be released, and Hamas has to be removed from power. Then, together with the Palestinians, together with international interlocutors, together with Arab countries in the region, with the moderate Arab countries, not the extremists like Iran, or Syria, the moderate Arab countries, together with them, we have to find a solution, a political solution that will enable us to live side by side with our Palestinian neighbors, but ensuring security for Israel. You know, we in Lebanon, we're speaking about Lebanon, southern part of Lebanon. There was a resolution. There are two resolutions, a UN Security Council resolution, 1701 and 1559, that said that Hezbollah is not allowed to be in the northern part of Lebanon, near the border with Israel, 10 kilometers north from the border with Israel, and that it has to be disarmed. There is only one military in Lebanon, which is the Lebanese army. What happened? UNIFIL, which is the peacekeeping force of the United Nations in southern Lebanon, has not done its job. Hezbollah has been there. Tens of thousands of Hezbollah terrorists are in southern part of Lebanon, armed to their teeth. And UNIFIL, because UNIFIL does not have the United Nations does not have the ability or the capability to deter Hezbollah, and definitely not the Lebanese army. So we have to think, how do we prevent this recurrence of cycle of violence again and again and again, always initiated by the terrorist part? How do we prevent it?
But Israel in itself, Israel itself has on a number of occasions rejected the ceasefire, whether it's with Lebanon, whether it's with Hamas, as time and time again.
Untrue.
It is true. It is true.
So let me just tell you, there's a resolution called the Netanyahu deal, okay, that Biden offered, that was voted for in the Security Council. Who said no to that? Sinwar, the head of Hamas. We are willing to reach a deal that will include the release of all the hostages, okay, with the release of all the hostages, and that Hamas gives up its governance in Gaza. Over. We're not looking for anything else. Sinwar, just check yourself again. Sinwar does not want to reach a deal with Israel. He does not want it.
But that's different. That's different from saying that Israel has not rejected. Just to be clear to the audience, that's not the same as saying that they do not want the deal.
Can you give me what deal? Can you tell me?
The Lebanon ceasefire was rejected by Israel, right? On the basis, because the number one priority, as you mentioned, let me finish. The number one priority for Israel, as you mentioned, is for the release of its hostages. Will no ceasefire be possible unless that criteria is met?
If there's a deal that says release of hostages, as part of the deal, that will bring an end to the current war. But if we cannot ensure the release of our hostages, why would we allow the other side to continue holding them on? And we're saying, okay, we're stopping. What's the solution in that regard? And how does Israel ensure the release of the hostages, innocent hostages, men and women, children? The oldest one is 86 years old. The youngest one is a year old. What are we supposed to do to ensure the release of the hostages?
I want to talk to you a little bit about diplomatic relations between Trinidad and Tobago and Israel. Given what we spoke about earlier in this interview, have relations between both countries suffered because of Trinidad and Tobago's decision to recognize the state of Palestine?
Look, the recognition of the state of Palestine, in my position, it was a mistake, but it's not something that affects our relations. I just don't think it helps in any way. It doesn't help calming down tensions in the Middle East. It doesn't help Trinidad and Tobago in any way, because they're not going to get anything from what is the Palestinians? What can the Palestinians contribute? But it doesn't assist in anything. But the relations, I don't want to speak in terms of have become better or worse or whatever. Of course, we're seeing who's been standing next to us side by side in these difficult times that we're going through, and who has not been standing by side. Now, not standing by side does not mean criticizing Israel, but it means absolutely understanding Israel's right to defend itself, understanding that Israel has no choice to do but what it is doing, because we still have 101 hostages and we're still fighting a terrorist organization. So we're analyzing, the way countries react towards Israel, what the leadership is saying, and of course, we have our right to understand positions and what it means to us and how it affects us. Before October 7th, we were working on really big programs for Trinidad and Tobago in assisting in water technologies, agriculture, food security, and so forth, that we could really provide and support Trinidad and Tobago. And unfortunately, that has all now been frozen. I hope we can go back to that course in the future, but right now, that's not it. But I regard Trinidad and Tobago as a friendly country. It's a friend of, we are it's friends of Israel. I think that the approach is sometimes is incorrect.
More than friends of Israel, Mr. Ambassador, Trinidad and Tobago citizens have a deep-rooted connection to the state of Israel, which is the home of three great religions of the world: Jews, Muslims, and Christians. When you trace back the histories of somebody who is Christian or Muslim or Jew in Trinidad and Tobago, you go back to Israel. The conscience of this nation is affected by the war, whether you're Christian or Muslim or Jew. What would you, as ambassador of Trinidad and Tobago, say to the population of this country amid this war?
So it's amazing that you mentioned that, because, look at the two sides. One side has freedom of religion, which is Israel. You can hear the muezzins in Jerusalem. Go to Jerusalem. You'll hear from the mosques the calls of the muezzins, together with the bells of the churches ringing and the shofars from the synagogue. You'll see priests and imams and rabbis walking in the streets freely. Freedom of religion is something that is incredibly important to us. And who are we fighting? In a Hamas, which will attack any group that has a different religious ideology to itself. And that's why the numbers of Christians around the Middle East, but definitely in Gaza, look at what happened in Bethlehem with the Palestinian Authority, has decreased significantly. In Israel, it has grown. So what I would say is really, the problem is a lot of people are being influenced by distorted fake news on social media. Really try and learn the facts, really try and see how the land of Israel, the Jews are indigenous to the land, dating back more than 3,500 years back. Go and see what Israel is doing to allow the freedom of religion, to allow prayers for everyone. Doesn't matter if they're Muslims, Christians, or Jews. And then go and see what's happening in Gaza. Go and see Lebanon, for instance. Hezbollah. Can you, Ryan, explain to me what is Hezbollah's position in Lebanon? They're not an official military. It has the official military, but they're much stronger. They're a Shiite extreme organization that has killed has killed Christians, has killed Sunni Muslims, has killed Druze. You tell me. I just look at the difference between the two sides.
Mr. Ambassador Itai Bardov, you will always have a spot on this program. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.